Hello, folks! The Celtic Nerd here, bringing you another nerdy video. Oh, we just have a cable where the mic is, so I want that to be rubbing up against it. So, this is the Celtic Nerd Talks, and today we're going to be talking about Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I have just watched episode 3. We visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. And let's see my thoughts on it. Okay, so far, I would argue this is has one of this has in my opinion the most divergent of the other episodes. It deviates so much from the book. However, it deviates in a sort of positive way. And now, again, as I said in my previous videos, the deviations, like every deviation, every change, every cat, like Rick Riordan, the author of the book, he has had a hand in this series from the beginning. So yeah, that being said, if he like this is not me saying like whether or not these are good decisions. These are not me giving my approval of them. This is just me, like, my thoughts on the episode as someone who is a big Percy Jackson fan. In fact, but prior to doing these reviews, like, I am also re-listening to the audiobooks, going chapter by chapter, basically. Now, this episode essentially picks up almost exactly where we left off. And I will say one thing that this series is sort of doing a little better than the audiobooks have done is sort of like expanding on the mythos of the world. You see, the books didn't really expand on it too much in regards, like, you sort of had to pick stuff up based on what was going on in the story. This show goes into details of explaining some things. Now, there are some books, there are about two books to my knowledge, I think three maybe, where they do go in a bit better detail about like the world. They're sort of like the Similarians from Lord of the Rings in that regard. I actually have one of the books, but that one mainly focused on the gods and their individual stories. So whereas this is expanding a bit more. For example, it expands on the quests. Now, in the books, we hear about other quests that other heroes have done, but the thing is, they are sort of had to be requested by a god, a deity. And if you don't get requested, then you have to wait until like the oracle or something, chooses you via prophecy and whatnot. And typically in the book, you get the impression that you get the impression that people volunteer to go on the quest with you. That is not the case. Apparently, there's this whole like selection ceremony. Well, at least in terms of the series, because again, like we the golden trio of the series is always just together, with the exception of book 2 and 3. The golden trio is pretty much always is together. Now, mind you, actually no, I think it's only in book 1. Hold on. Book 1, book 3. So yeah, they're together in book 1. It's not book 3 I'm thinking of. It's book 4 I'm actually thinking of, where they're Percy Jackson and the labyrinth, battle for the labyrinth. Yeah. Alright. Basically, typically, there's a rule that was established. It was explained in the book, books that at most three people can go on a quest. The main hero who was given the quest, and then two other people can accompany them. Now, I refer to them as the Golden Trio because they're the three characters that mostly get along. They're the three best friends, and that is obviously Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. And again, it's a simple formula: two boys, one girl. But yeah, there's a whole selection process where Chiron, uh, gathers up heroes that he deems are skilled enough and worthy enough to go on the quest. And typically, now we see Percy interrupt the ceremony because he immediately picks Annabeth. And I know I complained about it in episode 2, but we do in episode 3 get the scene where Percy hears the prophecy. I'm so glad they kept the prophecy in. And I'm just really glad about that. And it comes, the reason why he picks Annabeth comes up, and then he picks Grover. So, yeah. So it's sort of cool that he had the fact that he had potential options, and he just decided to pick Annabeth. Now, that being said, it is still very. Percy explains why he picked Annabeth, and it's because he believes she. The way he says it, actually, I don't want to say go into too much details just because of uh, you see, technically, all these videos are should I should make sure I have spoiler with them. I'm actually gonna, I have video software editing software now, and I should really start doing this. And yes, I'm gonna start doing that. So hopefully, if you're watching this video, I've edited it so that there's a spoiler thing above in red, preferably red. If I can, please let me edit it to add red. But yeah, it should be appearing up here when I'm talking about anything related to spoilers, which means I will be rewatching this video, just so I know I place it in the right location. But anyway. He says to Chiron the reason why he picked her was simply so that if if someone if basically it's the fact that she will complete the quest. So right there we get signs that Percy we get sort of like duality within Percy there, and because again, like from the end of the last episode, Percy was pretty much only going on this quest for the sheer idea of I want to save my mother. Now, Annabeth doesn't know this. Chiron probably suspects this, but deep down, Percy still wants to help his father, possibly, or at least save the world. And as such, he is picking someone that will essentially do what is necessary to complete the quest. Now, next, obviously, he picks Grover. We see Grover being punished for telling Percy about his mother. Now, again, we're seeing some change. We're seeing deviations from the book due to the fact that, because it is what it is, and this is a change because again, Percy was not is normally does not get told this. He gets told that his mom's still alive by someone else. I'm not going to go into too many details because we'll hopefully get there at some point. And yeah, it was Grover that in this iteration it is Grover that tells him. And Percy is picking Grover because he's his friend and whatnot. He doesn't give any like super detailed explanations, but we do get an explanation later in the episode. So we'll get to that one. Now, for the most part, Grover is explaining how is the sacred duty about the quests. Grover's just talking up. We're actually being set up for a punchline because it's all about like this whole seriousness. It's sacred, blah blah blah, and immediately we cut to them sitting at the back of the bus next to the toilet with a big massive guy flushing the toilet, and Percy's like, oh, like you can tell that it stinks, and Annabeth is okay. I will say this because it should be brought up because it starts sort of here. Um, this whole the way they're approaching Annabeth and Percy's relationship in this iteration is now because I'm just gonna say this. Um, Again, this is big spoilers, but by the end of the series, Percy and Annabeth are genuinely like they end up together, and don't I can't help but feel like now again I have to see it. There's one moment in this story, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which this season seems to be taking place during. Again, I imagine because the Disney Plus has called the series Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I'm assuming we're going to get a season per book. Now, that being said, they plant the seeds in Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief in a particular scene, and they don't touch it again for you know a good while. Um, it doesn't get re-brought up again until the Sea of Monsters. Again, that's one of the things I do like about the series is the slow growth of their relationship, and I enjoyed watching it sort of grow organically. Um, so on that note, uh, there is a scene there where it gets planted here, but because of the deviations, I feel like they might. I feel like they might steer away from it, even though their relationship does play a big part in the final book. Like their relationship does play a huge like it's a huge factor in the last book. And again, if they depend on how they decide to how far they decide to deviate from the books, we might not get it, and we also might not get a scene that I was hoping to get done in live action, and it's a scene that I like because I'm a sucker for good romance in my stories. I like a bit of romance sprinkled in. It's one of the reasons why I like certain shonens. Like I liked Bleach. Now, mind you, the manga did a better job to establishing a relationship, and the same goes with Naruto and Hinata, as well as I also love Sword Art Online because of it. Like, yeah, I watch Sword Art Online mainly because of the cool action, but I do love the romance that's in that. Um, but anyway, so yeah, there's a certain scene that the at the very end, it's like the last scene in Percy Jackson and the Olympians that before that story ends with Percy and Annabeth. But yeah, their relationship is a big thing in the final book, and it also continues in the following series, which is the Heroes of Olympus. Yes, there's another series after the Percy Jackson series. Sorry, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and then it's the Heroes of Olympus, and then there's another one, and then there's another. There's like there's loads. Anyway, so there are deviations. Because of this, now the reason why I'm bringing up all this deviations that they made, that my fears for the divergence. Sorry, no, the changes. I'm trying to sound fancy. I think subconsciously I'm trying to sound fancy, which I'm trying to use that word. The change because of the changes that they're making. has been concerned about that, but again, I have to hold judgment until I see that particular scene in the Lightning Thief. Now, because Percy and Annabeth are very much antagonistic towards one another throughout this episode. Now, again, it's the one episode where we see them spend the most screen time with one another, so it sort of makes sense that this is where, because they have the most interactions here, this is where we start seeing like their relationship develop, and Percy is still a bit upset about her actions during you know the games, during the capture the flag. So they go back and forth constantly. They seem to replace Grover's music. Now Grover, to put in D&D terms, is a druid multi-class with a bard as being a satyr. He can harness music to use nature magic. Now, they sort of replaced his reed pipe with him just singing. I'm okay with that. It has led to two very funny moments. So I'm all for it. Grover starts singing because Percy and Annabeth are arguing over music. Sorry, not music. They're arguing over who's in charge and who gets to make decisions. Annabeth, because this is her first time going out on a quest, obviously she's very anxious, and as such, she wants to do a good job. And because she's sort of in a similar position to Percy in terms of communications with her divine mother, she wants to impress, you know, and so she does not want to fail this quest. As such, she's taken lead. She believes she has 5 years of training. She believes she should be in charge. So, and she also believes she's the smartest. So, her and Percy are button heads there. So yeah, there we again we this is also the scene where Percy is explained. It's explained to Percy why are they not flying to Los Angeles, why are they taking the bus and potentially other types of methods to get to Los Angeles from New York, because like flying would get them to Los Angeles very quickly. And yeah, and it's explained that, well, Zeus would probably want to kill you, and being in the sky is being in his domain. Because, again, Zeus does not control everything beneath the sky, he is the sky god. So he dominates the sky, which is a bit strange because Poseidon does control the skies as well. But it's more his control of the skies is in relation to storms, but then again, so is Zeus's. But Poseidon's domain of the skies sort of stops once you get above land. It's like the skies above the ocean, Poseidon has control over as the Stormbringer, but like technically the land is also Poseidon's because he is also the Earth Shaker. He is the god of earthquakes as well. Again, Greek gods. They wear a lot of hats. For example, like Hades being the god of wealth as well. He is said to control all the gems that lie beneath the earth. So again, there's overlap with especially with those three gods. There tends to be a good bit of overlap between them. So, so yeah. Um. So we get here's where we get one of the biggest change is sorry, there's actually a scene we Percy gets told about Talia and her becoming a pine tree very early. It's much earlier, and we see them taking a taxi to the bus station as opposed to being driven there by the head of security of the camp, which I'm blanking on his name, but essentially he has eyes all over his body because he never wants to be snuck up on. So yeah, and in fact, when Percy and Annabeth first get into an argument while he's bringing them there, he's supposed to wink at Percy. Um, So yeah, Percy knows about Talia being turned into a pine tree. Now he says he do. Again, they're leaning into the whole autistic stuff with the demigods because Percy says something that is very emotionally blind, I should say. Like he says something that's very insensitive about it. Sort of like how again they're leaning into the fact that the demigods might have like autism might be something that the demigods have in common. It's something very interesting. I would be because my mom has also done a lot of looking into it. I'd be interested in seeing her thoughts on this. But yeah, so back to the scene on the bus. So yeah, they're arguing. Grover is explaining why why monsters hunt heroes and how is it that the monsters can locate heroes. And we see Annabeth in the a rest stop for the bus, buying snacks. Now, mind you, she does a thing that you would expect of a 12-year-old, and she buys a lot of junk food. She buys like it's just a lot that she gets a look from the cashier. But Annabeth is noticing something is up. So she notices something else on the when she gets back onto the bus, and she quickly puts on her cap and she starts talking to the Fury. Because apparently a Fury is there in disguise, and they have a bit of back and forth. It seems that this Fury is the same Fury that caused Talia to eventually be turned into a pine tree, and Annabeth and her have a back and forth, you know, and she makes Annabeth an offer. Annabeth quickly and clearly rejects this offer. Um, when by quickly getting off and getting over to Percy and Grover and being like, okay, we need to get off the bus now. So this is a big change because the bus is normally in motion when Mrs. Dawes, or actually, funny enough, we actually get her real name uh, in this series as opposed to the books. Electo is her name. So Electo and her sisters in the book are supposed to be on the bus disguised as old ladies, and they're supposed to attack. They all claim that they need to go to the bathroom, and they all are getting up to go to the bathroom, and that's how things kick off in terms of the bus. And there's supposed to be fights on the bus, and there's a whole like things just go horribly wrong on the bus for Percy and the gang. However, in this case, they're at a rest stop. Annabeth is quickly trying to get them off the bus. They push out the rear window because that's what they're meant for in terms of the emergencies. And the alarm goes off. The bus driver tells everyone to get off. And so the Mrs. Dawes is being Electo is being delayed getting to them. There's no fight on the bus. She's like, come on. She's trying to get through the crowd as they're trying to get through the rear window. However, her sister then crashes through the window in Fury form. Again, no one looks at this. And Annabeth is just like, hey, and throws her dagger, kills Electo's sister. And then they escape off the bus. This is a big deviation because in the book, as I said, there's supposed to be a big fight between the three sisters, Grover, Annabeth, and Percy. Percy does some things that is very chaotic and very dangerous. Eventually, the bus does pull over to the side of the road, and Percy does manage to defeat one of the Furies. He's supposed to. He defeats one of the Furies with his sword, and they tie up one of the other Furies basically they restrain the Furies in some way. They use the fact that they're in a confined space to their advantage because the Furies can't really do their full body movement because of their wings, and they tend to be much bigger, and the bus is too small for them. But they smell ozone, so they quickly get off. And this is an example of Zeus wanting to mess with them, and he's apparently sent a lightning bolt to hit the bus, which then causes it to explode. And this is the event that eventually brands Percy. Now we get a hint of something's going on with the normal world and Percy before this. Apparently, Percy is being looked for by the police, but so far he's the only one that is aware of it. In term, he saw a picture of himself at a bus terminal, but then uh, later down in the book, he is branded as a criminal because of an event on this. Because from the human's point of view, he has a metal bat or something, and he's attacking old ladies, and then the bus exploding, so he gets blamed for that. That doesn't happen here. Instead, all the humans just get off the bus, they get out of the back of the bus, and they run to the forest. And then this is when we see a big clash of conflict with Percy and Annabeth once again. Grover is just trying to stay out of it, but again, both of them are trying to pull him in. Percy's like, he's going to take my side, and she's like, why would you think he's going to take your side? And Percy is immediately just like, he's my protector. He's supposed to. It's his job. And then Annabeth's like, he's my first protector. And then that's when Percy realizes, wait, you were Annabeth's. So the satyr that you told me about, that was supposed to protect Talia, that was you. And so Grover then immediately interrupts him by going like, ooh, I smell food. And it's like, what? And then he just starts leading him. And then this is when we learn about satyr paths that satyrs specifically take in the wilderness to just travel. Which I think is pretty cool. It sort of makes sense that satyrs or mythical beings would take these type of paths. They would have these secret routes and whatnot. It makes sense. So it's a nice expansion to the world. Now again, technically they're supposed to. It's this scene is supposed to happen at night when the weather is starting to turn. Now, they wind up at Auntie Am's Garden Gnome Emporium. This is a big change because in the book, Annabeth upon seeing the first statue, Annabeth's like, no, I wonder what M stands for. Like, no, like she is very much like, let's not go to this place. Let's get the fuck out of Dodge. She's very much like, no, we should not be here. Let's go. But then Electo shows up. Because again, without the lightning strike on the bus, she's still alive. Mind you, we've only seen one of her sisters. We have not seen the other. And Electo is about to attack them, but then Medusa shows up. And I will say, the actress that they chose to play Medusa, absolutely great, splendid job. I don't really care too much about the lack of the accent that they emphasize that she has in the book. I'm completely fine with it. And they really play up that Medusa's story in Greek mythology is a tragic story. It's not. She's not just some kind of monster. She's a very tragic story, and it's a story of both how Poseidon and Athena are just complete assholes. It's just a story about how the gods can be assholes just because they're gods and they believe that they deserve better. You know? It's just a very tragic story. So they try and hem that up. And basically Medusa is on no one's side. She's basically just like she comes out and she's like, I don't like bullies. So you can come in and have something to eat, or you can deal with Electo yourself. But she won't come in. And basically, Medusa is just pointing out like basically she's neutral. But again, you see a sort of lack of that neutrality later in the episode. So yeah, they play her off as first being sort of like neutral. She's not on the side of the gods, but she's not like on the side of the heroes either. And she's just out for herself, or at least she just doesn't like bullies. So, Percy is drawn to trust her. Now, again, this is very interesting. Again, they're playing up the story between of her tragedy, with the fact that Percy and Grover and Alma, the fact that they know about who she is and what she is from the start. So, Annabeth reluctantly goes inside. Whereas Percy's like, something's telling me to go in. My mom told me her story, and I trust my mother. So, because now this is, I like this. It lays down the sort of like foundation of what happens in the Sea of Monsters, as well as I'm trying to think of example. Uh, who was it that met the harpy? It was Percy, yeah. So it lays down what happens with the harpy in Heroes of Olympus. It lays down the foundations of when he meets two titans. Um, Sort of with Cerberus, as well as Tyson. So yeah, we're seeing like hints of that, where Percy's not just going to judge a creature based on the fact that they're supposedly a monster. Um, and so I like that. It lays the foundations for it, because we have like in the throughout the series we do in the book series we do see Percy having sort of like, he doesn't just assume some monsters are evil. Like now again, depending on if they're actively doing stuff, then yeah, he's like, okay, no, you're dead. But when it comes to like if they're just he's how should I put it? Again, with Medusa, like if they're not being aggressive towards him from the get go. Oh, yeah, Sea Monsters has the best example of this, but yeah. Anyway, so but yeah, if they're not being aggressive to him or actively trying to hurt him or other people, Percy does not care if they're supposed to be evil monsters. And again, we see two big examples of that in the Sea of Monsters. No, not Sea of Monsters. Well, we do see it in the Sea of Monsters, but we also see it again in the Titan's Curse. Sorry, I'm mixing up my books. So yeah, either way, I like the fact that we see this, that Percy is trusting that like there's must be more to her than just being a monster. So now Electo does not go inside. She's afraid. Clearly, she's afraid of Medusa. So she is waiting outside for them to come out. Now Medusa tells her version of the story of like what happened to her, and for the most part, it plays out in a very similar. She describes it in a very similar way as um, the way that it's told in mythology. She was a priestess of Athena, and then she fell in love with Poseidon. Now that's where the story ends. For those of you that are aware of Greek mythology, uh, yeah, again, this is shown as an example. Is a good example of how Poseidon can be just as bad as Zeus. In certain regards, there's a meme about it. There's several memes about Zeus and Greek mythology and demigods. But yeah, Poseidon can be just as bad. Now, however, she has an issue with Poseidon because of he did not stand up for the person he loved, and she has an issue with Athena because Athena was so self righteous, and the fact that she punished her, and that, but she does not believe in holding grudges against the children. Now, this is a deviation from the book because in the book, Medusa very much holds Annabeth responsible for her mother. And they don't harp on the eyes too much, Annabeth's eye colour, as much as they did in the books. Because again, when it comes to the Childs of Athena, it's more so their eyes that tells you, like, that they're a child of Athena. So yeah. Oh well. Eventually, Medusa tries to turn Percy against his friends. He doesn't go for it. Instead, he attempts to run, and they attempt to run and hide. But again, they can't exactly go outside because Electro's waiting for them. So they go to the basement where they find a big, massive underground cave, which is just filled to the brim with statues. And this is when Medusa reveals that, hey, I'm going to kill you. Clearly chose to side with your parents. You're inheriting your parents' traits. You're choosing to be like your parents. So I'm going to kill you. And so now a big change here is in the book. Grover plays a significant role in the conflict against Medusa. He plays no such role. His role has sort of shifted from the books. Now, he was a bit of a comedic character in the book, and he does play. Okay, in terms of combat, he plays no role except for this fight, and even then, his contributions to the fight are played off more comedically. In the book, he is flying around with the flying shoes and a branch of a tree, and he's basically flying around blind, using only his heightened senses as being part animal, with his sense of smell and hearing, and he's just flying around blindly, like smelling and hearing, trying to hit, Medusa. And it's at this point where Percy and Annabeth are supposed to work together to defeat Medusa properly. And Grover is basically just playing distraction. Now, Annabeth comes up with a plan and tells Percy the plan. Percy executes the plan. We do not see this here, but we see them sort of working together. It's not clear whether or not they came up with the plan, or if these are just, or if they're just playing off each other. For example, Medusa is going after Percy in particular, and because he uncaps his pen, which then turns into a sword. She sees the glow. She's heading towards the glow. Annabeth apparently had her invisibility cap on. Now, again, it is sort of implied they came up with a plan because Grover's like, okay, guys, here's the plan. When I say Maya, that's the time to attack, but that triggers the shoes, and he can't control the shoes, so he flies off. That's him going for the fight. But then Percy and Annabeth are like, okay, new plan. And that's when we see them hiding. It turns out Annabeth quickly removes her cap from behind Medusa, puts it on her head, and then says, now, because again, it's when you look into the eyes of Medusa does her power work. So because she's invisible, Percy can't see her. So he just swings, hoping to hit her head. Because he has to go straight away, otherwise Medusa might move, and the swing might be off. This is where it gets a bit ridiculous for me. Her head, he clearly decapitates her, and somehow the baseball cap stays on. Clearly the head she got decapitated, the head's off the shoulders, and it clearly moved along the ground. And somehow the baseball cap stayed on throughout that entire situation. That's where I'm like, really, the head clearly rolled, and the hat stayed on. No, again, I'm not a big wearer of hats, but the idea of a hat, like, if it if the head rolled sideways, here, it'd be better to use this as an example. If the hat rolled sideways and it was on either side, it, I imagine it would still probably fall off, like, that way. And then if it rolled off like this, it would definitely fall off. So again, because it's invisible, we can't see which way it's rolling. But in my mind, I can't see a way it rolling. I can't see the hat staying on, basically. Where it then, with the sudden impact on the ground, like, how Turley could Annabeth get the hat on her, and in a very split second, the hat then making contact with the ground, the kinetic force, going through the head and the hat, not knocking it loose, and then rolling and then staying on until Percy picks it up. So yeah. Now, they eventually use this as a very cool way of, taking care of Electro. Percy quickly goes out. He removes. He has to hope the head's facing the right way. Removes the hat, holds it up, freezes the Electro. Annabeth watches Percy in this. Again, I think this is supposed to imply that, like, okay, maybe he's starting to, like, maybe there's something in him there that she misjudged. We don't fully know yet. Now, this is when Percy reveals why he picked who he picked to go on this task with. He picked Grover because he trusted Grover would be on his side, but now he feels alone because Grover's not taking his side. And he picked Annabeth because he believes him and her could not become friends, and as such, the final bit of the prophecy could not really come true. So basically, he trusted Grover. Now, this is where it gets a little off because, again, Grover did lie to him, like, for years. And see, that's okay, sorry, I need to bring this up. True Percy's flashback. Now, again, I may have to rewatch episode 1, but it is implied that Grover was with Percy for a very long time through his life in school. But yeah, hold on, Percy's 12. Annabeth has spent 5 years at camp, so which means she was 7. She was 7 when she got to camp, and she stayed there for until she was 7. So that means Percy would have been roughly around the same age, so 7. When he was in school, so I would have to, but again, that's a very long time. Okay, yeah, no, there is, so assuming if I'm correct, and Grover has been with Percy for a very long time now. Hold on, folks. I'm just going to. No, I have all my audio stuff muted. I'm just trying to get a flashback of Percy. I'm just trying to look at that flashback real quick. Alright, so we see Percy drawing the picture of the mechanical rhino. Then something changed. Okay, no, they seem to be about the same age. There, okay. So yeah, okay. So, alright, so he probably only known Grover for maybe a year, 2 years. Because he doesn't seem that much. There's no real difference with how he looks now and the way he is in that flashback. So, when he apparently met Grover. So in that case, this is a person who lied to him for about a year, and who then sort of betrayed him. Now, mind you, I guess Percy sort of forgave him for lying to him. But the fact that he chose Grover because he explicitly trusts Grover to such an extent that he can't see him betraying him, but and he chose Annabeth because he can't see her and him becoming friends at all. So therefore, the final phrase of the prophecy probably wouldn't happen. The one that you call friend, you will be betrayed by the one that calls you friend. So there you go. So he's hoping to avoid that bit of the prophecy by expressly being people there that he either completely trusts or someone that he does not see becoming friends with. Very interesting choices. And but yeah, no, Grover's situation is sort of shifted between just being comedic relief to also being the person that tries to hold the group together. He's constantly trying. He's constantly trying to act in a way that keeps the group on task, and to basically keep them from fighting or quitting out of frustration. So he points out to Percy like, "Hey, Annabelle doesn't have a good relationship with her mother, and that's her only keepsake." Because Percy wants to bury Medusa's head with the hat on underneath this place, like while they're in the cave underneath the house, because that way it would be secure. Which means he's asking Annabeth to sacrifice her hat, essentially. But then he also confronts Annabeth about, of course, like she's not seeing how Percy feels by possibly having to choose between his mother and the fate of the world, like the emotional turmoil that must cause. Now again, I keep bringing it up, but it definitely seems like they're laying on to the like autism being a thing with the demigods, big like because the emotional blindness or the lack of empathy that autistic people seem to have. Um, so like they're really leaning into it, which again is not a bad thing. I think it's really cool, and the fact that Grover is there trying to point that out to both of them is great. Uh, then we get a very funny thing that I loved from this chapter in the book. Percy immediately is like, okay, you know what? I have another idea, and he immediately attempts to start mailing the head to Olympus, and she's Annabeth's like, no, you shouldn't do that. And he's like, why? And she was like, because they'll think you're impertinent. And Percy just responds with, I am impertinent. Like he does not give two shits. And again, it's something that is constantly in Percy's dislike or disdain for the gods and their attitude is throughout the entire series. In fact, it only grows throughout the entire series. Multiple series, in fact. There's a preferred joke where in the book series, and again, I don't know if it's in the book series or not, but in my mind, it should be a scene where during Trials of the Apollo, I like to believe that Apollo went to Percy and Annabeth's apartment, because by that point I believe they would be adults living on their own, probably having their own place. If not, either way, he goes seeking help from Percy. Percy opens the door, sees who it is, and is like, "Fuck off," and closes the door. Because again, eventually Percy is removed from the story, because again, like that, they do expand on the main characters, and which is great because again, it's Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and then Heroes of Olympus, Trials of the Apollo, I can't remember what it's called. I think Legacy of Cain or something like that. Anyway, there's the Egyptian god ones, and then there's the Norse god ones. And so yeah, Percy is not always the main character. He's not even always the main cast. Is my point. So yeah, Percy is just like he's just like, I'm sending a message to the gods. So he mails it off, and then Percy starts singing the song that Grover attempted to sing, the Song of Consensus, which was what Grover attempted to sing in order to try and get Percy and Annabeth to get along on the bus. And it cuts immediately. We don't even we hear Percy start singing it, and then we cut back to New York, and someone's carrying the box, and clearly it's Hermes. We see him about to go into Olympus. And it's like he's like, guys, you gotta see this. And I was hoping we would see Zeus or like some kind of indication of Zeus or Poseidon's reaction. Mainly Zeus. I was expecting for a shot of the Empire State Building, and then just a crack of lightning, or sorry, the sound of thunder or something like that, indicating like Zeus is obviously angry at this. But yeah, that's about it, folks. So, in terms of chapter coverage, let's see. Now they really stretched out that chapter they did. I feel like. Let's see this episode. Percy Jackson and Olympians. No, I don't want to play Lightning Thief. I just want to get to the chapter section. Okay, so I'm off for the crypto. So, this episode roughly only covers 2 chapters. They expend. The 2 chapters it covers are I Ruin a Perfectly Good Bus. That is 31 minutes and 49 seconds. That could have been the length of an episode in and on itself. And then we visit the Garden Gnome Emporium, which is the namesake of this chapter, and it's the one that they decide to focus on most of all. That is 34 minutes and 11 seconds. So, I guess they didn't expand on it too much. They completely changed the chapter, because in that it's mostly Annabeth and Percy just talking to Medusa. It's not revealed until she is who she is, until she asks them to take a picture, and Annabeth realizes who it is, and she pushes the boys down to not look at Medusa when she's about to spring her trap. But yeah, basically they went a completely different approach with this chapter, but I really liked it. There were some very funny moments. We got some lore building with the idea that, because like it wasn't just humans and satyrs that were there, it was monsters as well, which in my opinion is fantastic. There's a lot more depth to the characters and even to the monstrous characters, as opposed to what we simply got in the series. It wasn't until a bit later on in the series do they had a bit more depth to them, like with again, what I said, with the harpies and with, for example, cyclopes, which yes is the plural of cyclops is not cyclopses, it's cyclopes. I was really shocked to discover that, but yeah. But yeah, there's a lot more nuance to them, and I really do like how they really try to make Medusa a bit more empathetic character, as well as they still maintained her as a villain, but you could definitely sympathize with her. They didn't really dive into her story in the books. We only really get to read about her story from the Similarian book the Similarian type book. Because again, the Similarian is a very different book, but again, it's a world building book. We don't get it until we don't really read about her story until you get to that book, which is just optional reading. So again, it is fantastic that they made her more sympathetic, and the fact that she's just not outright a villain. But clearly, when you get to the top part of her emporium has a lot of monsters, but then when you get to her basement, that's where you see the majority is human. So I thought that was a really cool thing there. Um. So yeah, in terms of like again, uh, the only real actors I can really comment on is Medusa, the actress who played Medusa, and Electo, or Mrs. Dawes. Fantastic, absolutely loved it. The effects of Medusa, brilliant. I love how similar to the book, the Medusa is not as she's traditionally portrayed as being like a traditional Gorgon with the snake lower body and then the snake hair. She just has the snake hair, so she still has that very beautiful woman thing going on for her, and so yeah, and I like how in the book they gave her more of a Middle Eastern veil that she headdress that she uses to cover her face. Um, in this, they gave her a bit more of a fancy one, which completely is, it's which helps her stand out a lot more, given the environment that they chose to put her in. So really fantastic. Also, we get a hint of who they chose to play as Hermes, and I absolutely very much approve of the actor that they chose to play Hermes. Absolutely approve of it. Um, I want to get his name. Hermes, Percy Jackson series. Oh, here we go. Actor. I'm just making sure it's him. Yeah, it is him. So, the actor who plays him in the Percy Jackson series, Percy Jackson and the Olympian Disney Plus series, is Lin Manuel Miranda. Uh, Very funny comedic character, and so yeah, I could definitely see him playing Hermes. The only thing I am curious about is, are we going to see him in his fancy suit? When he was making the delivery to Mount Olympus, he was in a UPS, beige box. So like, yeah, very different outfit. However, at some point we do eventually see him in the book wearing a nice suit because he's the head of the delivery. We don't know how other people do deliveries for him, but basically he's not dressed as a delivery man. He dresses more like a CEO. When we see him in the book, as well as we see him wearing jogging outfit. So we don't know, but yeah, I absolutely approve of him as Hermes. Absolutely love it. Great casting choice. Um, yeah, that's. I'm pretty much sure that's it. That's all I have really to comment on is the casting choice, the performance. Again, extremely uh, good performances there. I like the added conflict between Percy and Annabeth. It is quite interesting. Um, yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I could comment on. No, yeah, there's none. There's none. I've already talked pretty much about everything that happened in the episode. Again, everything is just really nicely done. Very curious about the next episode. I decided to watch the after credits teaser for the next episode. Oh boy, some interesting things are gonna happen. But anyway, this is Celtic Nerd signing out. One name, one sky.